Welcome to Everything Dog Training with me, John McGuigan. Our goal is to bring you information on dog training methods which work and are kind, cutting through the myth and the folklore to help you have a better behaved, happier, emotionally healthier dog who is a joy to be around.
Well, great news today. Petco, that's one of the big, I think it's the big chain pet stores in the US, has just banned the use of human-operated electronic training devices. So that's e-collars or shock collars. So Petco are no longer selling those, which is fantastic news for dogs and for dog owners. And well done to everybody that's campaigned in order to get that to happen. I've seen a couple of comments on social media today saying that it's the human operated part, which means that the invisible fences, the electronic invisible fences, are still being sold. Okay, now in times like this, we've got we can see what we've not achieved. Okay, but let's take a moment and celebrate what has been achieved there. Okay, Rome wasn't built in a day. We chip away at these things, okay? We take our wins when we get them, and then we work on to the next one. So just don't let good be the enemy. Sorry, don't let perfect be the enemy of good, I think. And I'm hideously butchering that quote, okay? So yes, it's not perfect, but it's truly excellent news. So well done, everybody that's involved in that. Hi everyone, thanks again for joining me and for giving up your valuable time to listen to me. I really, really appreciate it. I hope you're all safe. We are going into the winter. COVID restrictions are starting to come back in some countries, and a little bit stricter than they have been over the summer. So I hope that you're all staying sane and finding your feet, actually, and getting on with life as best as we can. This is temporary. And I know that it doesn't feel it just now, but we are living through an historical moment just now, and 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, if some of us live that long time, we will talk about what we did during this pandemic of 2020 and probably definitely into 2021. And hopefully not beyond if we get a vaccine next year. So I do hope you're well. One of the things that I have found, I've talked about in my last podcast about some of the influences I've had, and Robert Greene and Ryan Holiday, who are two of the authors that I read, talk about alive time and dead time. And we've got dead time would be sitting watching the television, okay, and alive time is then doing productive work, and it's balancing those things. So sometimes we do need dead time. We need time to just sit and rest and chill. Brene Brown, in her podcast Unlocking Us, talks about her process of writing, and she tells a really cool story of her husband taking the kids away when they're younger, and for a whole weekend to allow her to write a new book. And she spends the whole weekend watching Law and Order back to back, and they come back in and they have a fairly heated discussion about things, and that's on the Monday evening. But by the Thursday, I think it is the Thursday or Friday, her book is written. So she has needed that time of being alone and watching that kind of entertaining show, which is not really adding much to her life, in order to process what she's going to write in her book. Okay, so as long as we're using our time productively, then it's not for me to say. You can do what you like, all right? But if we are using ourselves productively, we don't come out of it at the end of it and go like, what the hell happened there? You know, did I just lose 10 weeks of my life? And hopefully we won't get fully locked down again. And I know things are different in different countries. So two reflections first before we move into the bulk of today's podcast, which is talking about positive reinforcement. I have just finished, just been out a walk with Logan, so it is about 5:45 here in the evening. Took him out, and the streets were relatively busy with people coming home. So walked up through my neighbourhood, and he was on. Okay, so his arousal level was up. I could tell by how much he was, how he was moving on the lead. versus how he moves when he's relaxed, okay, and the amount of sniffing that he was doing. So he's kind of racing through the environment. So there's a little shop just about 100 meters up the road from me. We walked up there and he started getting more aroused. And then he turned around and looked at me, and that's him asking for his Kong. So previously, I've recognised that he has needed the Kong as a soother, and that's something that we do regularly. But this time, he actually asked for it. Okay, so which was a really glorious moment. He has recognised, and again, how much of this is we don't know, because I don't know what is going on in his head. But clearly, he needed help. Turned around and asked for help. I gave him the Kong as a soother, and that settled him a little bit, and he went back to sniffing, and we had a nicer walk after he had his Kong. That comes from me knowing my dog well. Okay, so spending that time observing him, really studying what he's doing, and thinking about his needs in any given moment. Okay, so that's the first example. The second one was, which follows on really nicely from that, it's a young a border collie who's about 2 or 3 years old that I'm working with just now. And he is spooky with noises. Okay, so he gets spooked really easily, and the fella who owns him lives in a ground floor flat or apartment on the ground floor. So that's floor 1. That's the first floor, isn't it, in the US? Which I never understood. I don't understand that. Right? It's not the first floor. You go up a first flight of stairs. Just differences in cultures. Anyway, so he's on a ground floor flat, and we did some work last week with Buddy controlling the noise of him making those noises. So we set up a procedure that he could actively make those noises, and that was good. Okay, worked on how to deal with unexpected noises. And that has settled him over the last week or so since I've worked together. So we've been out for a walk with him because he gets spooked and heard cars driving by. So we went round the block, and then we asked him if he wanted to go around again, and he clearly told us that he wanted to go back towards the flat. So he moved back towards the flat, the apartment building, and then sat down. Okay, so he's not been stubborn, he's not been belligerent, or any of these naughty, okay, any of these disobedient, all these other labels that we talked about in one of the previous episodes. He's clearly telling us what he had a need there. So we asked him, okay, so put some food down at his feet. I then the owner put some food down at his feet and invited Buddy if he wanted it. So at first he took it, and then the fella stood a few steps away from him, and we did that 3 or 4 times before Buddy then turned around and says, no, I don't want to come, I don't want to move any further away. And he's able to do that through his actions. I don't want to do that. Okay. And as soon as we took half a step back towards the front door of the building, Buddy picked up his pace and walked back in again. Okay, so that's a really clear and open communication with your dog. Okay. Now we'll talk in other episodes about when you actually need to get your dog to do stuff. Okay, but that's not the purpose of this just now. This isn't a free for all. Okay, there's sometimes that I have to tell my dog, this is happening and we are going to do it, and you have no choice. But those instances should be rare. So we get back into the house or back into the flat, and we started to do a little bit of work, and I asked the client, does he ordinarily, when you bring out the training equipment, what will he ordinarily do? And he said he will ordinarily get up and join me and be ready to move. Okay, and he didn't this day. So again, that's another clear indication of him not wanting to participate in that moment. And in order for a good life for our dogs, we can, if it's in our power to listen to those in those moments, then we do. Okay, so just some things for you to think about there. Okay, so we're looking at positive reinforcement today. There's a great animal trainer called Bob Bailey, and Bob and his wife, Bob's in his 80s now, and he's him and his company, and then his wife and his wife's husband before he died had a company which trained animals for film and television, as well as for other things, and they use positive reinforcement to do it. So Bob has a great expression saying dog or animal training is simple but not easy. Okay, and that's a really lovely expression to think about with this. Okay, so what is positive reinforcement? Positive reinforcement training is, positive reinforcement is a scientific definition. Okay, anytime that we start putting, we use scientific definitions or scientific terms in layman's terms or in lay language amongst the general population, it tends to lose its it tends to use its meaning. Okay, so I think I've mentioned before in this podcast the word normal. Okay, so statistically normal, that's a term in statistics when we're talking about the collation and interpretation of data. Okay, but that word normal, when we talk about it from a statistical point of view, is different from the word normal when we use it in normal life. Okay, all right. And I didn't set that one up there. Okay, so positive reinforcement is another one of these terms. All right, now the positive reinforcement, reinforcement means to make something stronger. Okay, so when we reinforce a behavior, and it's behaviors we're reinforcing, we're not with positive reinforcement training and with training, it's the behaviors that we're making stronger, or we're removing, or we're extinguishing. Okay, the behavior itself, not the learner. Okay, it's a really clear, we have to make that definition. And when you get a decent grasp of this stuff, it means that we can then start looking at it in some aspects fairly clinically when we need to. Okay, so we're looking at making behavior stronger. We're reinforcing a behavior, and that behavior gets more intense, happens more often, happens faster, and with greater duration. Okay, so it becomes more fluent. Okay, and then the positive aspect of it is that we're adding something. So something is added after the behavior, which makes that behavior more likely in the future. Okay, so think of all these things that we're constantly paying in to the bank in order to see if we'll get those behaviors again in the future. Okay, so Logan is now, you can possibly hear him just breathing, having a little bit of a grumble. He's lying on my bed just now. Okay, so he prefers to lie on the bed because my mattress is clearly more comfortable than his mattress. Okay, so he has been previously reinforced with the comfort of lying on my bed. Okay, so the behavior of lying on my bed has been reinforced with that comfort. Okay, all right, so the positive part of positive reinforcement doesn't mean something good. It doesn't mean a positive mental attitude or a positive disposition. It just means adding something like positive and negative on a graph, again, in statistics, for example, or when we're talking about electronics or chemistry, the flow of electrons. Okay, so electrons leaving something is negative. Okay, like a battery, it's leaving the negative terminal, yep, and flowing towards the positive terminal. Okay, so it's positive and negative, and you look at a battery and it's plus and minus. Okay, so positive and negative ends of a battery, but we never think of a battery as having a good end and a bad end. Okay, so that's not what it means. Now, unfortunately, positive reinforcement training is good, and that then muddies the waters slightly. And I mean, when I say positive reinforcement training, unfortunately, it is good. Unfortunately, the term positive reinforcement is good, okay, rather than positive reinforcement unfortunately being good. Okay, so it just means that we're adding something after an event, okay, after a behavior that makes that behavior more likely in the future. Okay, and negative reinforcement is not bad in and of itself. It just means removing something to make something more likely in the future. So if you come in from, you've been out on the hills all day, okay, as you've been out walking, big hike, a big hill walking, and you come in and your feet are throbbing, okay, and you take your boots off and your socks off, and the relief that you feel from that, okay, that's in your behavior of taking your boots off has, if that happens the next time and you're itching to get those boots off, that's your behavior has been negatively reinforced, okay, because you're removing the boots and you're getting the relief, okay, of getting your feet back and, you know, and letting them breathe again and letting them relax. Okay. But we're not going to talk about negative reinforcement today. We're only going to talk about positive reinforcement. Okay. So dog examples. Examples of positive reinforcement for your dog. Your dog comes back to you and you give him a treat, you pet him, you say hi to him, and you give him a big game. That behavior of running back to you has been positively reinforced. If your dog seeks to play with other dogs and then runs and plays with the other dog, and that behavior of running and seeking and playing with other dogs happens more often, then the behavior, those play behaviors have been reinforced by the play itself, okay? Because the dog is enjoying that, all right? If you bring out your dog's bowl, or you open the cupboard where your dog's treats are, and your dog runs in towards you, then that behavior has been previously reinforced, okay? And it's reinforced by food usually. So ways that we can reinforce behavior is using positively reinforced behaviors is we can add toys or play, we can add food, can add physical affection, or we can add other things that the dog enjoys, such as moving forward with the walk, sniffing, getting to greet people and getting to greet other dogs. Okay. All right. So no matter if you look at your dog from whatever you're looking at your dog doing, okay, or your spouse or your child, if they're repeating a behavior, that behavior has been reinforced in the past. That behavior has been reinforced in the past. So problem behaviors such as barking, okay, or jumping up have been previously reinforced. Okay, so it's up to us to identify what has reinforced them in the past. Okay, and whatever the behavior is happening, if it's happening again and happening repeatedly, it has been reinforced. It has a strong reinforcement history. Okay, so human examples. Think of something that you do just for the joy of doing it, listening to music, listening to my sultry voice on this podcast, my exquisite Scottish accent. These are jokes, by the way, okay? So if you're listening to this and you have listened to this previously, okay, then this podcast, listening to this podcast has previously reinforced your behavior of listening to this podcast, okay? If you are listening to this for the first time and you hate the sound of my voice, which is perfectly natural and normal, then your behavior has not been reinforced, okay, if you don't listen to it again, okay? So if you don't want to listen to it again, okay? So listening to doing something that you enjoy, listening to music, going for a walk, okay, exercising at the gym sometimes, doing a sport that you like or an activity you like. So say that you play chess, you play darts or pool, or you game online, okay, anything like that. That behavior is positively reinforced, and social media is a huge one as well, okay, because your behavior of going on to Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or scrolling through YouTube for endless amounts of time, that behavior has been previously reinforced, and the social media companies know this, okay, and they play about with those schedules of reinforcement in order to keep you coming back. Now, from a biochemical or a neurotransmitter point of view, or hormone, it's not my area of expertise, okay, but you're getting dopamine every time anytime a behavior has been reinforced, you get a dopamine hit. Okay, so every time that you click on Facebook and you see somebody has liked your post or has commented on your post, that's a small hit of dopamine. If your dog runs back to you, and when you run back, you throw a party for the dog, so you'll have a big game of tug, and you'll give them some food and treats, then there's a dopamine response there. Okay, so we can play about with that if we do it properly. Okay, so those are human examples. Working. Okay, us going to work is a really interesting example because it's probably on a negative and a positive reinforcement schedule. And for most of us, unfortunately, it's on a negative reinforcement schedule. So we work in order to relieve the stress of not being able to pay our bills and relieve the debt that we're in, and whether that's a mortgage debt or a loan or a car loan. Okay, so very often with us working, we are working in order to relieve that stress not working in order to enjoy the money that we're earning. Okay, if you've got all the money in the world and you're in a really good and fortunate position that you're earning lots of money, and the money then allows you to do good things, I could probably say with certainty that you're now being positively reinforced for going to work. Okay, and then again, if we look at it, if you won the lottery tomorrow, would you go back to work? Okay, would you go back to work next week when that money's in your bank? Okay, and that's a good indicator of whether you're on a positive or negative reinforcement schedule. Okay. All right, so just moving on from that. Okay, so questions that come up is, do I always need to carry treats? Okay, so people get caught up on this quite often, they always have to carry treats. Now, I would say in the early stages, yes, okay, we do always need to carry treats because we want a dog getting addicted to those behaviours. Okay, so same as with your raising a child, every time your child says, please, well done, son, okay, or well done, sweetheart, you said please, that's really cool, okay, so you have acknowledged that they have said please with your praise, okay, and that praise then becomes that becomes the reinforcer. Okay, now if you look at it, if you're listening to this and every one of us was a child, okay, and if you have good manners and you're saying please and thank you, if people do every time you say please now, do people say to you, well done for saying please, that's fantastic? Okay, no, they don't. All right, because you've learned that is the norm. Okay, that's just what's expected. Okay, and you just build that into your behavioral repertoire. Okay, so they always need to carry treats. No, but if we want a behavior to keep happening, we do need to keep reinforcing it. Okay, so as I mentioned at the top of this episode with Logan, Logan's biggest reinforcer outside is his Kong. Okay, I can get him to do motivate him, to do a ton of behavior using that Kong. And if I bring out a steak and I've got the steak in one hand and a Kong in the other, I can slap him on the face. Not that I would, because he's my dog and I love him, okay? But I could slap him in the face with the steak. Now, he might take it, but as soon as that Kong moves, the likelihood is that he'll spit it out or not even take it in the first place, okay? Now, the dog decides, or the learner decides what is reinforcing, not us, okay? So think about an activity that you really like to do, okay? So for some of us, some of you, not me, okay, it might be going to the football. And some of us, it might be going to the cinema, okay? So my brothers really like the football, and I don't. I have never liked football, okay, or soccer. Football, because you play with your feet, okay? American football's played with your hands. And again, another thing culturally, I don't understand that. Why is American football called football? Because there's not so much kicking, it's mainly carrying and running like rugby. But soccer, which is actually football, is played with the feet. And if you pick it up, you get penalised because the game's called football. Okay. Anyway, right, moving on. So say, for talking sake, I had done a good piece of work and somebody gave me 2 tickets to the Scottish Cup final. Okay, I would not, and literally would not thank you for that. Well, I would thank you because of social norms, but you know what I mean. I just go, okay, thanks very much. But I would probably give them away. Okay, now say the big new blockbuster comes out, the big new summer blockbuster comes out, a new Mission Impossible, like Sean Connery, right? Mission Impossible film comes out, or the new James Bond film. If somebody gave me 2 tickets to that, to an empty theatre, okay, on a Friday evening, and brought in some nice food and snacks, okay, that's something that I would think was a prize. Okay, and that's something I would actively work to gain. Okay, so you see how now one of my brothers certainly wouldn't thank you for that. Okay, he'd be like, yeah, okay, he'd probably give me the tickets for that. Okay, so the learner gets to decide what's reinforcing. So just as I was saying with Logan, he finds a ball reinforcing or a rubber toy much more reinforcing than food, whereas other dogs do not. Okay. All right, so this is one of the other questions that comes up is, I've tried the positive reinforcement thing, or I've tried the treat thing. Okay, so there's so much wrong with that anyway when I hear people saying that. Now, there's 2 things that are going on there. They're confusing giving treats with positive reinforcement. Okay, yes, we can use treats as positive reinforcement, but but just because your dog is eating doesn't mean that a behavior is being reinforced, okay? And positive reinforcement, as we talked about earlier, has a scientific definition, okay? So if you've tried positive reinforcement and it's not worked, that's not positive reinforcement, okay? Because positive reinforcement, by definition, has to work. It has to make a behavior stronger. And if it's not making a behavior stronger, you are giving something after the behavior, but it is not reinforcing the behavior. So it's not positive reinforcement, okay? So saying something like positive reinforcement doesn't work is exactly the same as saying that gravity doesn't work, okay? Or thermodynamics don't work, or the chemistry of an internal combustion engine doesn't work, okay? It's not that that's not working, it's something else, okay? All right. Now, that's a different set of circumstances than if your dog is so stressed, anxious, or some other emotional state outside that they can't take food, okay? That's completely different from that, okay? So, and we're not going to, we certainly shouldn't confuse them, okay? Because confusing them, those terms gets in the way and confuses what we're doing, okay? Next question that comes up is, do I always need to carry treats? Oh no, I've done that one, haven't I? Yep, do I always need to carry treats? Okay, we always need to reinforce that behavior, but we can use a variety of reinforcement. Okay, so lastly, just before we move on that, there's a really glorious golden retriever that I see in the park. So the gentleman that owns the dog is in his late 60s, probably, or early 70s, and he's got this magnificent boy dog. And the fella strides out through the park, and the dog just enjoys being outside and being with him because he constantly catches him up. Now, this is one of the good things that with dogs is that we have bred them and lived with them for 10,000 years, that we have selected those genes which lend themselves to behaviors, okay, that being with us is positively reinforcing. Okay, the dogs just enjoy being with us, okay. But we shouldn't and mustn't take that for granted. Okay, so if you've got a problem with your dog, your young dog, usually it's a young dog, an adolescent dog, running off and not coming back to us, okay, or reinforcement's not good enough, okay, or not strong enough, or the history isn't strong enough, okay. Okay, now we've got what happens if you don't have a treat, okay. Now, and the other question from that comes up is, how does a treat compete with a squirrel? Okay, and again, these are comments and questions that come up from people that generally don't have a sound enough knowledge of positive reinforcement training. Okay, so when I first got Logan 4 years ago, he was fascinated and still is fascinated by other dogs. Okay, but I built up, and these numbers are not exaggerated. Okay, thousands and thousands of times that I have paired me saying, "Are you ready?" with the Kong. Okay, are you ready? Throw the Kong. Are you ready? Throw the Kong. And I do this over and over and over again. So when I now say, "Are you ready?" his head whips round towards me. Okay, so that's the behavior of disengaging from the dog or the person and re-engaging with me. And for that, he gets the Kong. Okay, and I've paired that over and over and over again. So just by doing that, okay, a few weeks ago, I was at the park, and up at the top of the hill in one of the parks that I use, big wooded area. It's squirrel season because it's the autumn and the chestnuts are out. Young dog, about 5 months old, walked down the path on one side. I moved Logan over to the other. I asked him if he was ready. I brought out the Kong, and he sat and looked at me. He glanced at the dog from one side. The dog was walking on one side, and a squirrel ran out about 6 feet away from us and ran up a tree, and he glanced at the squirrel. So he knew the squirrel was there. I saw that he had seen it, okay, and he stayed with me. And he stayed with me because through hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of repetitions, okay, thousands of repetitions, I have taught him, if he is with me, when I ask him, he will get that Kong. So it's a contract that I've built with him, okay. So that's how we compete with a squirrel. It's one of the ways that we compete with a squirrel. And the other ways that we compete with a squirrel is we teach our dogs to hunt squirrels, and I've done this very successfully very often, okay. So we look at hunting dogs, so like a pointer or a hound, okay, and some terriers. we can use the hunting of squirrels to reinforce the behaviors of staying with us, okay? And we can join them on the hunt, okay? So we can give them an opportunity to hunt. And the way that I do this, I'll do this safely. The dog never gets to catch the squirrel, okay? It's basically the hunting part, because that's exciting, okay? Because we're building all that up, okay? This is just really, really, really cool. We didn't get it that time, okay? But we enjoyed the process of hunting the squirrel, okay? And again, lots in that, okay? So this is just to give you a flavour of stuff that if you study your trade well and work hard at it, understand your dog and understand your dog's needs, we can do almost everything without correction, okay? Without saying no, without being harsh to our dog, and without using aversive training techniques and tools, okay? Such as shouting your dogs up to using an electric collar and everything in between. And I may or may not talk about this in future episodes, okay? All right. Now, what we've also got is when dogs are hungry or tired, okay? So if your dog is hungry, then we are, again, as I was saying earlier on with the example that we used of the human example of working and the relief from the debt or the stress of not paying the bills being the reinforcer. With a dog that is kept in a state of hunger, the food is now potentially a negative reinforcer, because we're relieving that hunger rather than giving the dog a treat that they like. Okay, so we're always moving away from something and towards something. Okay, so we look at the example of that is when you're if on a hot sunny day, for those of you that don't live in Scotland, you can tell me, you can email me what that feels like. Okay, right, on a hot sunny day. Our hot sunny days are 17 degrees here, okay, and everybody's out sunbathing, and I mean walking down the streets in their shorts and in their pasty blue skin out. Okay, so in a hot sunny day, if it's over 30 degrees, say 35 degrees, if I go into a cool room from the hot sun, am I seeking the coolness or am I escaping the heat? And the answer is both. Okay. All right. So these are complex things which we are trying our best to use language to describe. So one of the things that I've the kind of a bugbear of mine is that when people don't understand that these are things that are happening in nature, and we're using language to describe them, whether it's neuroscience, biochemistry, chemistry, immunology, and so on, okay, down to the rules of behavior, okay, and they're not pigeonholed, because that's not how nature works, okay, all right, okay, so is the dog hungry? So if the dog is so hungry that the dog is champing at the bit, okay, and or biting the hand off you to get food because they're so hungry, we're using negative reinforcement there, okay, and then that adds stress as well with which we'll talk about in future, okay. If a dog is so tired that they now don't lunge and bark at another dog, and we run them till they're tired, we're not using positive reinforcement training, even if we give the dog a treat there, okay, all right. So we need to look at if that dog is tired. So look at again, going back to the example with Logan. Okay, there's the dog run down the road from me where I live, and I take him down there and we play. Okay, and there's a variety of games that we play. We play hunting games, searching games. Okay, and then we play chasing and grabbing the tug, and chasing and jumping up and grabbing the Kong as I throw it. So when we start that game, he has a need to have that Kong, okay? And one of the things, again, listening to my dog and getting to know him, when he needs a break, he will move away from me, turn around in a circle and lie down, okay? And I can tell how tired he is by how much he flops down on the ground, okay? So I give him that break. Now, if I brought a Kong out at that point, another one, when he's lying there trying to rest and threw it, he would chase it, okay? But he's chasing it because it's moving and because he kind of has to, rather than because he's enjoying it. Okay. Now, moving on from that, okay, there's a when I was in my 20s, I worked in summer camps in upstate New York with children and adults with profound learning disabilities. Okay. And this is, again, one of the things that we actually have to have an adult discussion about. Okay. And people, when we discuss working with people with learning disabilities and profound learning disabilities, and we compare it with working with animals, people tend to get upset, or some people tend to get upset. All we've got there is learners who learn differently from us. Okay, and if we strip it back to that basics, we can look at it clinically, and we can actually look at it compassionately as well. Okay, so one of the guys he had kind of obsessive compulsive behaviors about cleanliness and tidiness. So he had to have the door of the dining room shut. Okay, so one of the rules was, when the big man, and he was a big guy, I mean, he was huge, he was like a linebacker from the NFL, a big human, and a big gentle guy as well when he was in a good mood. And then if he wasn't in a good mood, again, because he wasn't getting his needs met, he didn't have that ability to communicate what his needs were, and then got frustrated. And with frustration came aberrant behaviours. Okay, so when the big fella was in the dining room, the rule was the door get kept shut. Okay, now unfortunately, one of the things that happened, I worked in the cabin with campers who were in wheelchairs, so we would have to have the door open in order to get the chairs in and out. Okay, so one evening we had brought our campers down the ramp back to our cabin, and Terry had been out beforehand and was sitting on a deck 2 cabins down from me, and somebody had left the door open, and he up and sprinted across the camp. And this boy could shift, all right, or this man could shift. Raced up and slammed the door shut. Okay, with his counsellor in tow, shouting, "Please close the door." Okay, and I'm laughing at the humour of it. I'm not laughing at Terry's. There's humour in this stuff. Okay, and I'm absolutely not being disrespectful. Okay, now you turn around and say, is Terry enjoying that process? Okay, so just because he's doing a behaviour and doing it repeatedly doesn't mean that he's enjoying it. It means that there's an obsession there, or he's compelled to do that. Okay, all right, so put that aside for a second. Okay, so you look at some of the things that that we have, these things that we do, okay, that people do. Turning off, making sure that the lights and the gas is turned off. Okay, did I turn the cooker off? Did I turn the oven off? Did I turn all the lights off? Is the door locked? Okay, did I do this? Did I do that? Okay, now the person there, there's some sort of mild psychosis, maybe, I don't know, something slightly, that's not, those behaviors are not okay. Okay, and I bet the person would prefer not to be able to do them. But when we get these things kicking in, we get anxiety and all these things that they kick in, and they lead to these problems. Okay, so the person, if you turn around and say to them, would you enjoy doing, do you actually enjoy going around and checking all that your windows are locked 6 times before you go to bed, and checking 12 times if your front door's locked? Okay, they would say absolutely not. So just because we do a behavior doesn't mean we're enjoying it. Okay, and just because we do it repeatedly doesn't mean we're enjoying it. Okay, so again, looking at these things. So how that applies to dogs. Okay, if we look at how a border collie fetches a ball versus how a Labrador fetches a ball. Okay, and if we're not doing competitive sports and we're just training them as is, if you pick up a ball, okay, for a Labrador and throw it, that dog will pick that up and bring it back to you. A border collie is likely to do the same. But what I'd like you to do is, if you see dogs off lead at the park, start watching what happens beforehand. Okay, the border collie is very likely to run out far so that the ball lands between you and them. Okay, and that's where a border collie wants sheep. Okay, so for the border collie, the ball represents sheep, and they want to control the movement of the sheep and keep it between the two of you. Okay, so what you'll also see in very often real border collie and herding dog behaviors is they will spit the ball out at you and push it towards your feet. Okay, all right. and stare at the ball. Okay, so they're looking, staring at the ball, and again, they're trying to control the movement of that ball. Okay, now look at that compared to the play style of a Labrador fetching a ball. Pick up a ball, throw it, the dog will chase it, okay, and bring it back to you. And if you pick the ball up again, the Labrador is likely to hang about, okay, and wait for you to throw that ball so that he can chase and retrieve it. Because for a Labrador, the ball represents a bird, okay, so pheasant, partridge, okay, duck, all right. So it's a game bird that the dog is, the ball represents, okay. And also look at, when you pick up that ball, if the Labrador looks at you or looks at the ball, all right, because a lot of the time the Labrador will be going, throw it so I can catch it, throw it so I can go and catch it and bring it back, okay. There's a great line from the movie Up, the Disney Pixar film, and Ian Dunbar did the canine consultation for that, and there's a great line in it when Doug, the retriever, says, throw the ball and I will go and fetch it and bring it back so that you can throw it again, okay. So the Labrador or retrievers tend to enjoy actually running and retrieving it, whereas a Border Collie, although does it, we have to ask the question, is he enjoying that ball constantly flying over his head, or would he prefer a different game? Okay. Again, with Logan, playing with so he's a bulldog, he likes just to jump up and torpedo that ball, okay, and he gets the pleasure from holding the ball in his mouth and jumping and catching it, okay. All right, so again, looking at what your dog enjoys, okay, because if they enjoy it, it's positive reinforcement. If you're seeing that they're not enjoying it, but they continue to do the behavior, the likelihood is it's negative reinforcement. All right. So find out what your dog likes and use that to reinforce behaviors. Okay, so, and again, this is not always, it's some things that we like sometimes, and some things that we don't like sometimes. Okay, so if you look at it with a child on sports day falls and hurts themselves, okay, and mum or dad runs over and gushes all over them, oh, my baby, okay, in front of all their pals when they're 10 years old, what an embarrassment, okay. So they might just turn around and like, you okay, pal? All right, do you need some help? Yeah, I'm fine, dad. I'm fine, mum, up I get, okay. And they kind of soldier on, all right. Or they might go, yeah, it's fine. But us kind of, as a parent, kind of gushing all over the top of them and being all coochie coo is not reinforcing for that child. However, in the privacy of your own home, if your 10-year-old is upset, they might want a cuddle and reassurance, okay. So that's a human example of that. Now with dogs, Logan is lying sleeping on the bed. If I got up and lay next to him just now and started reading my book, the likelihood is that he will lean in against me. Okay, he'll lean in against me and we'll have that contact, and he'll put his chin on my chest or on my stomach, and I'll sit there petting him while I'm reading. But outside, if I go to touch him when he's playing, get your hands off me, dad, stop touching me, just throw the ball, okay? And again, looking at this, and these are things that I've seen so many times. Our dog comes in, we say, good boy, good girl, we give the dog a treat, and then we go and touch the dog, okay? And the dog turns their head and moves away from you. So they'll kind of duck under your hand, or they will literally move back from you, okay? So that touch there is probably, I would say is definitely not reinforcing and is probably punishing, okay? Dogs like that, don't touch me just now. I don't like you doing that just now. Can you please not? Okay. All right. So again, looking at all these things. So if your dog has done a spectacular recall away from other dogs, okay, and we give the dog 3, 4, 5 treats and then going to touch them, we are now saying to the dog, I'm going to give you things that you like and don't like when you come back here. Okay. And that muddies the waters when we want to be thinking about just giving the dog something that we do like, that they do like rather. Okay. All right. And then lastly, how we deliver that treat and with thought. Okay. So if so say you're sitting at home, okay, and imagine the best meal that you can have. Okay. So you're going to tell me what's the best meal, what's your favorite meal. Okay. So think of what that is. Okay. And I'm going to a world-class chef, Gordon Ramsay, Jamie Oliver, other chefs from elsewhere than the British Isles do exist, okay? But they're going to prepare your meal, okay? You're going to tell me what music you like, and what temperature you want the room at, okay? How you like your lighting, okay? What dinner guests that you want, if you want any, and what time of the day, and I provide all that for you. Now think of that versus exactly the same meal, okay? But it's cold enough that it's unenjoyable, okay? In a cold room, in a freezing cold night, with the wind howling outside, no heating on, and with one candle or a bare bulb sitting there, and you're sitting on your own, okay? And compare those two things, okay? So I don't think there's anybody on the planet that would, well, who knows? Ask this question on Facebook and see if they agree with me, okay? Sane people would not argue that the second scenario is more pleasurable than the first, okay? Unless you're a horrible nihilist. So the way that we deliver that food to the dog is, if we get down and deliver that dog the food with care. Here's one here for you, pal. Oh, I've got another one. Oh, check this one. I've got another one for you. Oh, and this one's going to move, and this one's going to dance, okay? And I'm going to move away, and you're going to get that treat, and now chase that one, okay? And now catch that treat when it's moving, okay? And now when I'm petting you, I'm going to slow you down, and I'll maybe scratch under your chin if you like that, okay, while you're eating. You see how we're giving that food there becomes completely, it's a completely different experience for that dog. And if the dog recalls to you outside and you provide that really considered party, whether it's really exciting or really cool and really calm, and your dog likes it, and the way that we know that they like it is if we see those recalls increasing in speed, okay, and frequency. When you ask for them, you get them like that. Okay, the dog just bangs those recalls out and races back towards you because they know mum and dad they throw a brilliant party when I get back. It's fantastic. Okay, so a great episode in Parks and Recreation where Ron Swanson, who's the kind of grumpy boss, it's his birthday and he's dreading it because his counterpart Leslie, who's so enthusiastic and loving life all the time, throws parties for everybody at birthdays, and he's dreading it because I don't want a fuss made. I don't want people to acknowledge my birthday. I just want you to leave me alone. So what she does is she gets a steak from his favourite restaurant delivered and a bottle of his favourite whiskey, and she puts him in a room with his I think it's the Magnificent Seven. It's on the television. And that's his birthday present. That's his birthday party. And he just wells up as if, like, you know me, you know. So it's getting to know your dog and getting to understand and know what they like. Okay. Very, very, very lastly, just on that. Okay. If we deliver that treat in the palm of our hand, our dog can take that treat from the palm of our hand. If we deliver it with pointed fingers, okay, so our pinchy, grabby, monkey, chimp, human fingers holding onto that treat, and the dog is excited and clatters our fingers with their teeth, and then we start becoming apprehensive and pulling that treat away. We're now telling the dog, sorry, a moth just flew towards me there from outside. It's coming in the window. We're offering that treat, but we've also taught the dog there's a real possibility that that treat is going to move. So they start grabbing for our hand, okay? And all of these things get in the way of using positive reinforcement well, okay? So going back to that quote from Bob Bailey, simple but not easy, okay? You'd think it is simple to deliver your dog a treat, simple to deliver your dog a piece of sausage that they like, okay? But it's not always easy to do that well. Playing tug with a dog, okay, is a skill for us to learn, and we can use tug and we can use play in order to reinforce those behaviors that we like. Okay, so massive thanks again for listening to me this evening, or this morning. It's this evening here while I'm recording it. wherever you are. Oh, your big ear flap from Logan. I hope you're doing well. Please let me know your thoughts on this. I do enjoy getting your emails about this. If you can leave a review for me, if you're listening to this on iTunes, it's hugely helpful. If you can tell all your dog owning friends, and even parents and co-workers, because there's lots of stuff and deliberately using these podcasts in order to educate about behaviour and how we interact with each other overall. Okay, but anybody that you think that might enjoy this, please do let them know and share it. You can get in touch with me by email. It's info@glasgowdogtrainer.co.uk. Get me on Facebook, Glasgow Dog Trainer and Behaviour Consultant. I'm on Instagram as well, and I'm on YouTube. Okay, so you can contact me through all these things, but email is the best way to get me. That's info@glasgowdogtrainer.co.uk. All right, love you all, guys, and I will catch you in the next episode.
So a massive thanks for listening today. If you're at all interested in learning more about dog training, I have several online courses available. If you go to glasgowdogtraineronline.thinkific.com, that's glasgowdogtraineronline.thinkific.com. There's a number of training courses there which are both standalone courses and membership courses. The dog training and behaviour modification course is £15 per month, and for that you get 10 new lessons every month on a rolling contract, kind of like Netflix. If you're interested in that course, if you use the discount code INTRO, INTRO20, INTRO20, and 20 is a 20, so that's INTRO20, at the checkout you'll get 20% off for the first 3 years.